Welcome to another episode of Peers Over Beers, your favorite digital and social evangelist podcast, with your industry veteran hosts, Chris Tetzel. This podcast starts now.
There's a lot to dive into. So welcome to another Peers Over Beers. My name is Chris Tetzel, and we have Scott Wilder. We're going to live on the Wilder side as our guest today, and he's got some really cool news, and we're going to dive right in. Scott, tell us a little bit about the cool news, the announcement.
Well, it's great to be back here, Chris. I was thinking that we talked last time how I don't drink beer, so so I'm gonna, when I'm on, is it okay if I say it's Peers with Keers?
Sure, but maybe what are you drinking? Because I just had some coffee because we are.
I'm drinking coffee now.
Oh, okay.
I'm drinking coffee. So.
Well, Peers with coffee.
Peers with coffee.
It's still a branding thing, Scott. Peers over beers is the important piece.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Us hanging out, with not beers, but whatever we're drinking, whatever we're doing,
Yeah.
So.
No, Peers with beers, but we won't tell anybody it's coffee. So anyway, so it's great to see you again, and excited to be here. So yes, so I, as folks know, those who are close to me, not other folks, I took 2 months off and learned a lot about Minecraft and learned a lot about Roblox. And basically...
Wait, before you go there, did you start recording it? Because my son started recording some of his video gameplay, and within like 5 days, he had 11 or 12 followers. So on his YouTube channel.
Yeah, my son, how old is your son?
He's 11.
Oh man, they should get together virtually.
Definitely.
Because my son is 12.
Oh, he loves Minecraft, by the way. So.
Okay. Yeah, my son loves Minecraft, but he's got a YouTube channel on cars.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
cool.
But maybe they can do their own talk show.
I like it. Yeah. After this, let's talk about that. Anyways.
Yeah. So where were we? So yeah. So as of a week or so ago, I've joined Crowdvocate, and I think it was really the reason I was talking about the 2 months off was really thinking about what's important to me. And I'm a builder, whether it's organization related or whether it's product related. I had worked with Crowdvocate when I was at HubSpot. And, I don't know how much you're into the customer marketing space and sphere, but they recently did a program for the top 100. And there was something unique about it. And it is kind of community related in the sense that they looked at everybody for this top 100, not just their customers, not just their partners. And so I thought that was really kind of a nice way to approach things. Ari ran that program. So kind of that agnostic view. And new experience. It's been about 12 years since I've been a startup or early stage company, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's just going to go, not to play on your last name there, but it's going to be wilder than crazy. That's the way startups are. So tell me a bit about the role, your title, what you're going to be doing in the customer marketing community realm, and all those things. I want to dive in because I think I have so many questions.
Okay, well, I'm ready. I got my catcher's mitt, so trying. I'm very happy because baseball ended its strike yesterday. So.
Yes, me too. And not to get off again, but here at Reltio, our I guess you can call it customer marketing team is planning lots of and I already had planned these really cool baseball games. So we were going to go to the opening day of the Boston Red Sox, and we had a whole entire thing there. And I invited some community members. I was going to get to go, and we had to cancel it. And I was like, "What the heck?" So I'm excited. We're rescheduled some of that stuff, and now I've got to get more people there, right? But I don't think that'll be that hard. So
that's awesome.
It is awesome.
So so I wish I could go to an opening day, but so really what I'm focused. So the title is VP of Customer Engagement and Community, and the customer engagement part is how do we think about so a little bit background on Crowdvocate. They really focus on automating your customer-led experiences, and advocacy and customer references are part of that. And in working with them, taking kind of a page from what we did when I was at HubSpot, is at HubSpot, we basically integrated the CrowdVicate experience into the community. We can talk a little bit about that. So
Yeah.
if you think about that theme, how can we build these integrated experiences to help drive customer-led growth, right? So how can we, for example, when people think about community, some of the trends that have accelerated in the past year or so are they start thinking about advocacy and community.
Yeah.
Start thinking about education and community, right? So there's these experiences that, and I'm really happy about this because, not since the days at Marketo was, when I was at Marketo, we focused a lot on this, but really thinking of communities more than discussion threads, or more, I use the acronym as SAD, S for siloed, A for add-on, and D for just discussion. So you want to go beyond that SAD experience and think about how can you integrate, these other experiences. And so when we say community in the title there, that's just one aspect of it, right? We obviously have our own Slack channel, and it's a great place for any customer marketer to go in there and ask questions and get answers. But from a customer facing perspective, how do we create these integrated experiences? And then, I think we talked a little bit earlier about the last time that, I look at community as one part of this whole customer engagement experience. And so, what can I help in terms of helping elevate that kind of thinking, that perspective? And customer marketing, a lot of customer marketers are managing community. So that's why I signed up for what I signed up for.
Yeah, it sounds like a big opportunity now. Are you in the marketing team, I assume, or somewhere else? Or
it's a great question. So what we've done is we've actually, the way people historically think about customer marketing, we've actually broken it up into a VP of customer marketing who will be working on the brand, will be working on product related stuff. And then there's the VP of customer engagement. And that's what I'm doing. And when you're scared, and so this is really unusual I don't know any other startup that's done this. So this kind of like this other person, Odelia, she owns marketing.
Yeah.
But we've basically, if you look at it from a traditional lens, we've split it up in the sense that I'm going to be helping with some of the things that like marketers sometimes, feel challenged with, like working with multiple parts of the organization, thinking about the technical side of marketing, thinking about, thought leadership. She's working on building this whole, and CrowdVicate is relatively new and young. So she's working on a whole CrowdVicate brand. And I'll be the first to tell you, branding is not my superpower.
Yeah. Well, I like it. That's quite interesting. And when you talk about integrations, and I hear a lot of people trying to do some of that. Like if I look at today, my community, and when I think of integrations, I think of and maybe you're thinking a little bit differently, but I want the customers to, and even our partners, to get answers to questions, answers to what they're looking for as quickly as possible wherever they are. So they could be on our, academy or community or docs, maybe even support portal. So today our community is more around kind of the support type stuff. And, we'll change some of that, or not necessarily change it. We'll always have it, but I'm also kind of looking at kind of more that thought leadership piece because we need to dive more into that. But I do think of those integration type things, like enterprise search, SSO, and that kind of stuff, or one place where they can, if they were starting to get it, put a ticket together on support, then automatic search comes up or it populates and it says, here's a potential answer. They click on it, then either go to community, academy, or whatever, and then it logs in directly. And so that kind of, let's just say, customer experience is a lot better, which is it's hard to get to. I think you might be talking a little bit differently, but somewhat on the same lines.
No, I think that really echoes kind of how I'm thinking about it. So I think just you threw out some good ideas there. I'm writing them down. But one is, I think there's many of these and again, I tell people I grew up on Highway 101, where all these Silicon Valley tech companies are, and most of them lean in first from a product perspective when it comes to community, but there's also a big opportunity when it comes to thought leadership. So totally agree with you there. Two is there's when somebody asks a question, I love what you're saying. And, I think we did a decent job at Marketo when I did this, is somebody asks a question, give them the option to pick what type of answer, they're going to click on, or what kind of, discussion thread, or what type of information. Like, they might want to hear it from an expert, right?
Yeah.
You might want to hear it from an advocate, if those are different. They might want to hear it from a support person. They might want to hear it from a partner. So let them, it's kind of it's a buffet of information.
I like that.
And the last thing, just when my learning is, like, a lot of times, the first solution you share with a customer, whether it's knowledge base or community, they kind of latch onto it, and sometimes they forget, or they're not aware of these other, like, great, information, depots or places to get information. So that's right. So there's a theme, there's the type of information, and then the last thing, which you hit on right on, is the technical side. And so, I'm a little bit of a technical product nerd, and so like SSO, federated search, there's I can't even think of one company off the top of my head that has what I call the common currency for advocacy and community. Like, why are there two different leaderboards? Why,
Yes.
And so so what you said, I mean, that's how, I took a lot of notes, as I said, but that's how I'm thinking about it, is those kind of three different phases. And it's tough, like, organizationally, we should talk a little bit. I'm just writing an article right now on, ecosystems. I was reading this, and it's hard because, the person who owns advocacy, who owns these different advocacy, community, academy, they all have their, like, badges and credentials, but the question is, how do you get them in the same room to have a holistic program?
I think that's right. And something that I've seen, and I always wondered myself, is, academy is a completely different department in most organizations than community, than advocacy, a lot of times, right? Or sometimes I've seen marketing own community, advocacy, and different parts of that customer marketing aspect of things, right? But none of them are really combined. The way I see, look, the goal at the end of the day really is to get customers to adopt your product, to just go deep in it, and if they know how to use it and they're doing all the things that they need, they become advocates, they become smart in it, they want to talk about your brand, they'll want to do all of these things that are the exciting things. But the really, education is absolutely key. You get them the right education, and you're right, like, how do you have that unified experience? And I think about this a lot, is I'll talk to our guy, his name's Matt, he runs our academy team. I'm like, dude, you're giving badges away, I'm giving badges away, and nothing's talking to each other, and we're about to hire a customer marketer that is going to be thinking about advocacy programs. And I'm thinking, well, community people should funnel into that advocacy program. Let's not do something separate here. You know what I mean? Let's not necessarily buy another system. If, for example, Higher Logic has an advocacy program. Is it the best advocacy program? I don't know, but we could probably start with that, and then help funnel the community people that want to be advocates for us, and reward and recognize them all in one place, instead of this other system over here that's not talking to the system. And I think there's the system aspect of it. I think there's the organizational aspect of it. And if we're not thinking holistically about how those things talk to each other, and how we kind of help each other, with getting the customers not just the right place at the right time, but just making this a really cool experience. And I'm not begging this person to do this, they're not begging the same people to do this. We're all in whole and talking to customers all at the same time. I don't know if you want to react to that, but it's kind of how I think about
I
that.
think that's magic. I think that's exactly on. And I know nothing about, I didn't do my homework on you today. Sorry. But
no worries.
I don't know your company size, but the smaller you are, the easier it is. Right. So if you're at a big, $10 billion company, and everybody's got, it's not only the big organization, but people already have this mental model that they've been conditioned to. And so, in my new role, right, it's a smaller company, it's less than 50 people. So,
Yeah.
We can start at the creation, and really start in the beginning and try and figure out how all these pieces fit together. I throw not, I think, I don't know if you said it, but, the knowledge base guys, I invite them to the meeting.
Yep. Basically. Yep.
And so I think this new person, you can ease their pain of onboarding and say, look, let's let's conquer this together. And, HubSpot used a really good term, which, I've stolen and use a lot, is being customer first versus function out.
Mm-hmm.
And so many companies are function out, and you go to a website and you look at the global nav and it's an org chart, right? It's the top of the org chart. It's like support, services, marketing.
Right. Yeah.
And your customers, either, I don't think they're thinking of you that way. It's so I think it's a great opportunity you have, and I totally agree. HubSpot had their advocacy badges and community badges, all on the same profile page.
I love that. My company, when I started just over a year ago, we had 280 people or something like that. Now we have 400 and something. So we're hyper growth, and
Nice.
it's good. The challenge is that, especially for me being a one-man team, owning community and our executive council now, it's a lot of work. And so when somebody new comes on that, is interesting to me, that I know I need to get out to, I try, but it becomes a lot harder, right? As I kind of grow the team, hopefully that's going to happen very soon. But at the moment, when you think of, people get on to the organ, I think you have to think about their jobs, and, when they start their job and they have to start kind of pushing, but, Scott Wilder's got to get in there quick, or Chris Detzel's got to get in there quick, because it's like, hey, let's start thinking of this, unification of getting for our systems, so that customers get what they need quickly, because you want them to start thinking. First you want to see what they're thinking, right? And then you want to see if you can get on the same page. And I'll say this is the one thing that I really liked about one of our hires for our documentation. Funny enough, it was on our documentation side. She's a leader on that team, and something I was preaching in the very beginning in front of the entire organization was, in a sense, we need you call it a one-stop shop, if you will. So wherever the customer is, they're getting the information that they need, period. That's really the goal at the end of the day. And I was like, we have this system, and I have this slide that says all the systems that we had that were focused on the customer, and nothing that is unified. So community, docs, Zendesk, and named all the technologies, ideation, AHA, and all these things. But nothing talked to each other. Nothing. You just had to log in different systems. So nothing was unified. And so I kept preaching to people, like, yeah. And I was like, I got to do this community thing. Like, I can't, I can't do all this stuff because products had their stuff. And so you're probably right about, hey, you have 50 people, and eventually you're probably going to grow to 200, 300 people. There's going to be this hyper growth at some point, which is good, but it's also hard. She came in, so to finish this piece and this is probably, I don't know, she's been here 6 months or so, and she was talking about this, not one-stop shop, but this unification. We got to be where the customers are. And I was like, preach it, sister. And so she ran with it and started doing it. I was like, okay, so I became her advocate instead of her becoming mine, right? Because you can't do everything. And so I was so happy to hear about what, that she was on board, and she's the one started preaching it in a way. And I was like, oh shit, this is great. Let her do it. And I will be right behind her pushing that as well. You know what I mean?
What do you see? Like, what are the other challenges that you've run into in terms of, getting to that vision?
Yeah, I think organizationally challenged, right? So, one thing that I think is the holy grail, kind of what you guys kind of accomplished eventually at TurboTax or Intuit or whatever, right? How do you build community directly into the product, right? So, but that's one challenge. That's a really hard challenge, because they have other things. Even if you say that I can save the company $5 million, interesting enough, they're a little bit more interested in, these features and functions and things like that, for the customers, right? For on the product, it makes sense. But the biggest challenge though is one, time is finding time to do it. Two is resources. So for example, we already have all these disparate systems that are really good for our customers, but that aren't talking. It's a massive undertaking to do SSO, to do enterprise search and all those things. Even if you can find a company, there's a company called Search Unified, for example, and Search Unified, Grazidi is kind of the overarching company, and then they have this thing called and they can do a lot of the work, right? Like they can do a lot of it, but you still need resources to do some of the work for enterprise search. Now it's a little different when you think about SSO. So the challenge is you might not have anybody organizationally. Like at first, we didn't even have an IT department. We just bought our own computers and everything else. So we're just ramping up IT just now, which made sense then, but now, so we don't have anybody in IT to help with SSO and all these things. We have SSO for employee login, but we don't have SSO really for the customer. And then there's technology challenges like higher logic. You can only have one SSO. So if we use Okta for one SSO, we can't have a second SSO. The other piece is, since I have higher logic on a higher logic holds the information, the customer information there, right? And if I move to SSO, then I have to change it all out to where Reltio has to hold that information on like a Salesforce or some other thing. So it's kind of like having a new tenant. What is having a new tenant, period. And so that's just on the community side, right? Like, so no telling what other challenges there are going to be with these other things. So I know I probably went a little too deep there, but it's just a challenge, right? Then getting everybody on the same page is a really difficult thing, and then time. I don't know if I answered the question, but it's a lot of different things, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that was really really helpful. And yes, you mentioned Grazidi. So yeah, Search Unify is a great product and can do a lot of things. So
yeah.
I think it goes back to, you and I are in the trenches there, and there's people at the top of the pyramid who are making decisions, and it really has to come from them in terms of how you're set up organizationally and shared metrics. And so two stories that come to mind. Well, one is when I was at Adobe, I was doing product marketing there, and we were given the task of solving what they called the first mile. And so for the product I was working on, it was really like, how do you get people to engage right away? And the first mile they defined there was first 30 days. And we quickly changed that to the first hour of the product.
Oh, I like it.
But what I learned from there was they put together this cross-functional team, very small team. And so there was somebody from product, there was, me, there was a creative person, a program. And they basically said, you guys have a shared metric, and you guys have to figure this out and don't do anything else. Like, that's your job. And so I think, management has to get these people, right? Because we all want to do the right thing. We all want to work with, the documentation person, but we all get pulled by these different metrics. And so, or different directions, because we're being evaluated differently. So somebody at the top of the corporate pyramid has to say, like, okay, this is the problem we're solving, getting people answers fast. Tell me, you group, you're smart, Chris, Lori, John, Teresa, you're smart. Figure it out, and I'll get the distractions out of your way. And so I think that's one thing that's really important. So it's having that leadership at the top and getting people aligned. And then the second thing I think is, don't boil we all have great ideas, so start simple.
That's right.
And then I think that the third thing is that shared metric. And we look at engagement numbers, like, hey, Chris, what's the engagement number you have? But the reality is the documentation person is going to have an engagement number. The academy person is going to have an engagement number. And none of these engagement numbers are real. The real, I mean, they're the truth in some ways, but the problem is that it's the same customer in a lot of cases and three
Mhm.
engagement numbers,
Mhm.
right? And so you can get to that holistic shared metric and figure out like, okay, we're going to look at that person interacting on our own properties because there's other properties out there that your customers are interacting and learning on. We can talk about that, like Slack channels or whatever. So anyway, I think it's getting that cross-functional team. I think it's that shared metric, and then not trying to boil the whole ocean at once.
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of really great points. I loved all the things that you said. And one that was funny because I was about to say it is you can't boil the ocean. So, for us, we decided to tackle enterprise search first because we have a company that we know we can do it. We have that can help us get most of the way there. We think we still, we don't 100% know, but we can't. And I think the SSO piece for us is going to be the harder piece. So let's tackle that later. You know what I mean? And so, but I do like the idea of the shared metric and getting some smart people in the room and having the executive. I mean, we do have an executive that gets it. It's our chief customer, chief product. He does both officer. And so he's kind of the champion for that, but I really like what you said. That was good. I'm going to go back to this and put this as a clip or commercial. No, it's really good, Scott. It is really good and smart.
Yeah.
Where do you start? So when you go to this new job and you've got so many things to do, what do you think is kind of the number one thing? I think I know what you're going to say, but let's just see.
Yeah. So I've started already.
Yep.
So I think the number one thing, and this won't be a surprise, is just talk to the customers. I mean, I was a customer of theirs for a long time, but every customer has a kind of a different story, different perspective. And so, figuring out it's not like we have, a zillion, hundreds and hundreds of customers. So it should be fairly easy for me to sit down with these customers and sit down with them. And I think it's also the decision, then it's thinking about is it the decision maker? Is it the practitioner? It's kind of like the ABM approach is identify, all those people and meet with them. And then I think the next thing is based on those conversations is, I want to work on these integrations. I want to work on thought leadership, but really understanding, kind of the current state of affairs and where these customers want to go. Right. And, I think that it's just like in the community space, there's a lot of courses popping up on community, which, obviously tells us that people want to learn community. And I think, there's an opportunity to understand understand how that's being approached, in terms of how do people learn about community and how can people learn about customer marketing and things like that, and really build from there. So it's not like a concrete answer, but I think it starts with, if we really want to lean into customer-led growth, then I need to understand the customers. And the last point I'd make is, I write about this once in a while, is when I was at Intuit, and I know we both have a lot of Intuit influence in our lives.
That's right.
I would sit down, and this was in a smaller company. I'd sit down with the founder and I'd have my fancy, Google Sheets and say this is how we're doing. And he'd be and he'd say, tell me what they're saying, in their words. I want you to be able to quote. And so I think that's really, in terms of starting, is I want to be able to understand and hear from them about, what their experience is and where they want to go. And then my job is to share that with the team as well.
Yeah. How do you, with all these technologies kind of, and it's not going where you think it is, I bet, but with all these technologies, you get on the phone with the customer, are you just writing this stuff down? Because I'd ask them, hey, do you mind if I record this conversation as I ask you some of these questions? Because I'm going to take this back to our leadership and kind of make sure that we get this right. And those, because I would even cut the clip and say, just so this is what the customer said, and just have a little clip on it. Now that I know how to do all that stuff, but no, seriously, like, because it came right from the customer, instead of writing it down. Well, they said something like this, no, this is what they said. And, this, some things, and then maybe you have 5 clips of different customers. This person said this, and I'm seeing a common theme. And they said, well, you know what I mean? Like, just because that would be fun, but also right directly from their mouths, and people would be like, oh my God, yes. No.
I love that. I think that's awesome. I definitely would, steal a page now from your playbook and do the same thing. And, maybe also bring a customer into a product meeting, right? I mean,
we do that. I have to tell you, so something that we do and I love is we used to have every week. Now it's every other week. It's just basically a meeting of the entire organization, and somebody presents something about what they're doing in their department. But once a month now, I think they're doing it once a month now, is we bring in a customer to talk about their experience, with the product and what they're doing. And it's on the CSMs to do that. And it's an initiative from our CEO. It says this is, and now it's an initiative from our chief customer officer, product officer, whatever his title is now. But he's like, yes, because he owns it. So we have to do that. CSMs have to do it. But it's so much insight on what they say. We record it. It's all internal, but it's extremely helpful. And you get to and the CSM kind of owns that. So they'll ask them questions and things like that. It's just an interview. And it's really, really helpful for the organization to hear, So anyways, I think it's awesome.
Yeah, no, that's great that, you're capturing that. You're learning, you're capturing, you're sharing it internally. Chris, you're right. Chris is the CEO. He might
Chris Highland, yeah.
Know about this is we had experimented at Intuit with kind of adopt a company, right? So Scott Wilder might be, it's like a buddy system, but the buddy is not like the buddy is the company, your client, your customer, your client, and you should, if you're their buddy, then you should really understand like everybody there, what their issues are, where they want to go. I mean, customer success should be on top of it, but also, those guys are really busy.
Yeah, they are.
Right? They are. And I think, companies I've talked to that have done this, they tend to focus on the lighthouse accounts, which kind of makes sense from a financial perspective. But I'm always, we talked about baseball in the beginning. Now I'm going to mix my metaphors, and we talked about hockey. So, anticipate who those future lighthouse accounts can be, and maybe they become the buddies, right? I mean, if you see like, growth or a trend, I don't know, that's not a great analogy, but if you have a customer who's in the EV market, electric vehicles, like, that's a growing market. So, maybe you say, okay, as a management team, we want to be their buddy, help them be successful so we can ride that wave. And they're going to remember that, right?
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, look, your product has to work and do really the things that it says it's going to do, and you've got to always innovate on the product. But it's also about, maybe it's half and half, or maybe even more, I don't know, but it's about relationships. And I feel like, if you can build those relationships and become buddies, like you kind of mentioned, seriously, like, I was at our executive council the other day. So I was in Atlanta, and, we had a great council meeting. It's our leaders of our customers. So, it could be CIOs or CTOs or somebody that's a VP of data governance and those kinds of things. And there's one guy that actually lived here in Dallas, guy from Google, and I was like, "Oh, really? You live in Dallas?" I was like, "No way, I'm in Dallas." And we kind of started talking about places that we like in Dallas. And well, you like Papa Do's. Let's go to Papa Do's in the next few weeks. Okay, so I'm gonna try to start building a relationship with him, and just because he's close, and we can have Papa Do's or breakfast or whatever, you know what I mean? And something else we talked about is we kind of started building this thing here in Dallas. We now have like 11 people or 10 or something here in Dallas area. And I was like, so we got together once or twice already. I thought, why don't we just have some of our customers join us for breakfast if they want? They don't have to, but let's just invite them, the ones here in Dallas, yeah, it's a good idea. And then I told Sky about it, and he's like, yeah, maybe I can come, and so I think it's those kinds of things is, if you're close, why not go have a lunch or dinner or breakfast or whatever um, with those people. That's now, we can now get out more, and we should, not
No, I
just
love
kind of get
that.
off topic, but it's
Yeah, no, but it's really important. I mean, I think it's you're building community.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's an easy thing to do. You just buy them, and you don't have to always talk about work. I mean, they're going to want to, and it's fine. It's a good place to start, I guess. But let's talk about, he has a bunch of kids and he bought a ranch and all kinds of, you know what I mean? Like there's some
Yeah.
interesting things to talk about that person, because they're people, just like we are. They're not just, customers.
Yeah.
They're people. They're people, and we have to treat them as that. And because I don't have any agenda rather than just trying to get to know the guy and have a relationship. And yeah, I guess there's some agenda. Yeah, I want him to do some things, but I want to make sure he's taken care of. That kind of stuff from a product standpoint. But it's a cool relationship to have.
No, that's awesome. I love that. That's great. And yeah, I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. As you said, it's about relationships, and it's just, it's more important than the product.
Yeah, I mean, I think that piece comes, right. Like,
Yeah.
you start having those relationships, they start counting on you to help them. If they have problems, you make sure you help them, and maybe they'll be a customer for life. I mean, as long as life could be, for a customer, whatever that is. Maybe they have higher renewal rates. Maybe they, or maybe they talk about your product without you even have to do anything. Or, there's lots of things from a relationship base that you can do, and super important. You don't just have to have this box office to a baseball game to go. I mean, which is helpful. It's good. It's a good way to kind of get in, because, it's a high, cost kind of thing, and people want to, it's easy to get people to go to. But what are you going to do after that baseball game? And, can you talk to them? Do you live close to them? I don't know. I mean, just figure it out on the relationship. But I do think that's a huge key at the end of the day.
It's interesting because so the person I worked for at Intuit hired me to go to Google and start a small business community, start a AdWords agency partner community. And the AdWords guys, they were agencies, and they were active in both communities. But when they came to Mountain View, it was great because we didn't talk about work at all. And to this day, so we're talking 10 years later or whatever. And, they're good friends, and I use them a lot. I use them as a terrible word. I ask for their advice a lot on, industry stuff. I mean, we definitely talk about other things besides work, but, I really, AdWords is just such a really complex, it's more complex than, most people realize. And so, if I want to do an AdWords campaign, I'll reach out to them and ask for their advice. Or if they're in a certain segment, say one is in the EV market, and they reach out to me too, one was thinking about building a knowledge base for his company. And he's like, can you, right. And, there's no transaction agenda. So the book I mentioned once, I'm working on a book, and it's from transaction to transformation. And moving beyond like this transaction relationship, which is hard, right? Because we're all being evaluated on the short-term results.
That's right. Yeah, I agree, and I think that it's hard to. I think what you have to do is you have to put your mindset to, we have some transactions that we have to do, and we have to think about work and that stuff. We have goals, but in your head, how do you throw in a question that's a little bit personal to get to that relationship based? Like when I think of people that I work with, I like building relationships long term with not everybody, because you can't, but one is because I like people. I like to go to interesting places. I like to have those long term relationships, and And then, like you said, you start building a network of people in different areas so that maybe they can help you later. You can help them later. But also, like, how's your, 20-year-old kid, when you knew them when they were 10, you know what I mean? Like, how's that going? Now they're in college. Now they're doing these things, and, get a little bit personal because it makes it real life, and I think you just have to have that as strategy, long-term strategy in your head. Like, always try to think about how to be personable when you can. Not when you're on a call trying to get these things done with 20 people, 10 people, fine. It's just kind of the next thing. But when it's just you and somebody, you and 2 or 3 people and working on a project, whether it's internally or with the customer, I always think about, when I was at Forrester Research, there's this guy, his name's Rakesh, and Rakesh lives in France. I've been to his house literally 4 or 5 times in a beautiful place called Annecy in France, right? And so it's on the border of Geneva and France, and it's nice. A beautiful place. I get to go in the mountains, and now he lives in Paris, and so I'm trying to push a trip out there, to go see him again. But it's those kinds of things that that I love to do. It's, hey, how's the work? We'll talk about work a little bit, but other than that, let's go have some food with some French people. Let's go do the, he's coming to my house, that kind of stuff. It's, I'm not saying get that intimate, but every time, but how do you at least think of maybe just going a step further than, I'm very passionate about relationship building and think it's huge,
Yeah, no, I think that's, it's really amazing because, you and Rakesh are going to, 10 years, 20 years are not going to think about, oh, that Forrester article you did. Really,
exactly.
Right. You're going to think about, wow, you remember that time we went out and, had some bouillabaisse.
Yeah. It's like sometimes this guy is kind of crazy. Like, we were in Las Vegas one time, and he was like, let's go swimming in this fountain that's at the hotel. And I'm like, I don't think you should do that because, so there's this whole story around him jumping in the fountain with this girl that also worked at Forrester, and then they got kicked out. And I'm like, dude, I don't know why you would do that, but hey, but you remember that story. It's kind of funny or whatever, right? And so anyways, I just think that that's kind of a key at the end of the day is, yes, transactional, it's important, but it's also relationship based.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's really admirable in a lot of ways, because I think that, as taking it back to work, when I talk to community people and look who's successful, they, there's the passion for work, there's the domain knowledge, but there is this other thing about relationships, and whether it's online or offline. Obviously, most community managers are focusing, at least in our world, on online, but there is the importance of being comfortable, moving beyond, being able to talk about swimming, in a fountain in Las Vegas.
It's great. Well, Scott, this has been such a fun conversation, and wanted to say congratulations on your new role that you've already started. And, I think really fun things to come, and I'll definitely would love to have you on Peers Over Beers or Peers Over whatever you're drinking at the time. Again,
okay, today it's cool. Coffee.
Today it's coffee. Yeah, I don't have mine here because I already had like 3 cups and I don't need another one. As you can tell, I'm just like, but it's been really great.
Oh, Chris, thanks for having me again. And, the show is great. I've listened to a number of shows over and over, like the one you had with Danny, and I learn a lot from them. So thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for another Peers Over Beers. I'm Chris Detzel and
Scott Wilder, and you can find me on LinkedIn if you want to take a walk on the Wilder side.
All right. Thanks, everyone.